All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
It's Tuesday, the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Mo Kelly in for Mark Thompson, and what a glorious show we have scheduled for you today. We have some serious conversations. We're going to have some silly conversations. We're going to talk about real estate, the unaffordability of America. That is a real thing. And of course, as customary, we're going to be joined by David Cay Johnston, Pulitzer Prize winning author, and also Jefferson Graham. In the second hour, host of Photo Walks TV and former tech writer for USA Today. Let's get with it. As customary, I have to say hello and good morning / good afternoon to the captains of this ship, Kim McAllister, and also Tony Sorrentino. How you doing, my friends and family?
Hello.
Good, right.
Welcome back.
Tony, stop being shy. I know you. Let me just say off the top, this may surprise some people. This may shock some people. This may even anger some people. But we know that our president has been talking about this idea of a federal program for 50-year mortgages.
That's a long mortgage, Mo.
Look, I don't have 50 years left on this earth, okay? I'm 55 now, getting ready to turn 56. I don't want to live to be 105, 106. I mean, look, people want to have a long life, but I don't think I want to live that long under a 50-year mortgage. But let's listen to what the president and others have had to say about this 50-year mortgage, and then I'm going to piss you off with what I have to say afterward. Go ahead, Tony.
This morning, new backlash as the Trump administration moves forward with a plan to introduce 50-year mortgages.
It looks to be like the president's looking for a quick fix to a market that is fundamentally broken right now.
Over the weekend, Trump sharing this image comparing the proposal to the 30-year mortgage policies championed by FDR nearly a century ago. The move could potentially kickstart the now stagnant real estate market. Homes are currently seeing the lowest turnover rate in 30 years, and the median age of first-time home buyers just hit an all-time high of 40 years old.
It's really difficult to see right now for younger borrowers how they are going to be able to afford a home.
A longer fixed-rate mortgage would lower monthly payments, but would also create a higher total cost because of all that interest over 5 decades. Take a $400,000 loan at 6% interest. Under a 30-year mortgage, the monthly payment would be just shy of $2,400. Under a 50-year loan, it drops to just over $2,100, a savings of nearly $300 a month. But over time, that savings is erased by a much larger interest bill, because while the total interest on a 30-year loan would be about $463,000, the interest on a 50-year loan would total more than $860,000. Many, including longtime allies of President Trump, are not on board with the idea. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, quote, "It will ultimately reward the banks, mortgage lenders, and home builders, while people pay far more in interest over time and die before they ever pay off their home, in debt forever, in debt for life." And the White House has not yet explained how it would get around the Dodd-Frank Act, which effectively bans mortgages longer than 30 years.
Okay, this is where I go ahead and piss everyone off. I don't hate the idea of a 50-year mortgage. I don't hate it. Now, I don't love it in the way that it's being sold and positioned, but I don't hate it. Hear me out. And I say this as someone who has been in a 50-year mortgage. I bought my first property in, I was 36, so we're talking about maybe 19 years ago. So there was like maybe 2005, 2006-ish. It's like 2 or 3 years.
Right by the crash, right?
Right before the crash. And if you remember back then, they had all these exotic loan options. You can get these adjustable rate mortgages and, you pay interest-only loans, these HELOCs, all that kind of stuff. And it was a function of the George Bush administration and their housing initiative trying to get everyone in home, because we have this longstanding idea in America that home ownership was the path to generational wealth. And it is still true to a certain degree, but the entrance requirements, the entry fee is just so much more. I remember my parents bought the house that I grew up in. I was 5 years old, and it's in Harbor City. My mother still lives in that house to this day. 4-bedroom house, I can't remember all the square footage, but they bought it for $54,000.
Yeah.
And in theory, you could have a one salary household and afford a house. That's no longer the case. So the American dream is not really accessible for Gen Z in the way that it was for the boomer generation. That's just the function of math and capitalism and the unaffordable nature of America. You look at the Brady Bunch house right there. That was in the late, that house I think was built in the 50s, and we saw the show in the late 1960s. That house probably was purchased for $30,000. And now it's probably on the market. I know it was recently sold or resold like $2 million, something in my mind to be ridiculous. So how can someone coming out of school, 22 years old, or just leaving their parents' house, afford some sort of house? I mean, my parents got their first house in LA in the mid 1970s, and they were both under the age of 30. That is almost impossible these days. So let me get back to Donald Trump. The whole idea of a 50-year mortgage, I do not hate. When I bought my townhouse in 2006, I bought it for $340,000. I'm being completely transparent. Then we remember that we had the housing crisis, the Great Recession, the economic collapse of the banking industry. And then you had all of these exotic mortgages, people who didn't necessarily confirm their income. They couldn't financially afford those houses. Inclusive of me, but I was borderline, and they were all trying to get out of those mortgages, or they let their mortgages lapse during that time and just walked away from their properties. And then all these exotic mortgages collapsed in on themselves. We remember what happened. Hopefully you remember. But in my specific instance, my $340,000 townhouse went to a value of about $115,000. No way in the world I was ever going to be able to resell it, going to pay it off. And I had a second mortgage on it that was forgiven. And they reconstructed my first mortgage into a 50-year mortgage. Now, the Dodd-Frank law only applies to federal laws, but individual mortgaging companies, private companies are able to do that. What the 50-year mortgage allowed me to do was to obviously have that lower payment rate, and I could stay in my house. And then when I resold it, it was sold at that $115,000 valuation. Long story short is the 50-year mortgage is not for the purpose of people living in that house with that same mortgage for 50 years, in the way that a lot of people will buy at a higher interest rate. And when the interest rates come down, they will refinance to a lower interest rate. The 50-year mortgage, as I see it, and Kim, if you disagree or agree, please let me know. Same with you, Tony, because we've all purchased property. It allows a lower wall to climb over to at least get into a house and enjoy the benefits of home ownership. Is it a long-term solution? Absolutely not. You don't want to stay in that 50-year mortgage any more than you want to stay in that interest-only loan mortgage or the adjustable rate mortgage with that balloon payment coming. But it did allow you, if you used it correctly, to have the benefits of home ownership, the tax breaks. You can still develop equity. And then at some later time, as interest rates improve, maybe you can go into a more conventional 30-year mortgage. I don't hate this. Now, the other side is, I don't know if it's actually feasible as a government program. And if we use the lessons of the past with the Great Recession, it probably would set up the federal government for a tremendous economic calamity if our economy should go south and a lot of these people in these 50-year mortgages decide to leave the federal government hanging. Did I miss anything, Kim, in that?
No, I got two notes for you. One is a larger note and one is a personal note. So if you say, listen, the way to make America affordable is for you to pay for longer, pay more for longer, instead of ever addressing the cost of things, then I think we're kind of only looking at one end. And while I, as a homeowner, or the bank owns it mostly, don't want to see the price of my house go down, I still feel like you know, in my area, in the North Bay, an hour north of San Francisco, you can't buy a house for less than $1 million.
No, you can't.
It's nearly impossible. So for people like my kids, how are they ever going to buy? I couldn't afford my house today. So
Right.
how are people ever going to get in the market? And I don't know if a 50-year loan is the whole answer. And also, I think it depends on what kind of buyer you are. There are smart buyers that are more like investors that don't necessarily get attached to a place, and they're okay with selling a house, moving up, moving up, moving up. And then there's a sentimental sap like me who bought the house right next to my mom with plans to never leave it. So for me, like, I guess you could refinance out of your 50-year mortgage, but it just seems like, I'm not the person who's going to sell. So I would get stuck with the $800,000 in interest, right? Because I think I'm entering into a deal with a mortgage company. I don't plan to default on my loan, and I don't plan to ever, I plan to pay it off. And even if I did move to a different house, I think I would be that, if I were ever in the financial position, I would be that kind of investor that I would keep the one property that I owned and rent it out and then move to something else. I'm not really a seller. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, but in your question is the answer, because a 50-year loan is not for everyone. It's not intended to be for everyone. Like, for example, if you've noticed, talking about the larger issue of the unaffordability of America, if you try to buy a car these days, they will offer you a 7-year payment plan as opposed to a customary 5 years. They have leases now for 5 years as opposed to 3 years. They understand implicitly that people cannot pay what they used to pay 10 and 15 years ago for the same items. And this is what, yes, you are going to pay more in interest if you stay in that original loan.
Right.
But I'm a person who believes that if you should become a homeowner at 25 as opposed to 40, it affords you certain advantages than the 40-year-old. I think in terms of, you are still developing equity, probably at a lower rate, or definitely at a lower rate, because you pay more interest than anything. But you still have the tax benefits of home ownership. You still have an asset, if need be, that you can borrow against in case of an emergency. We can't forget about healthcare, because we all know that we are one health diagnosis away from being not only in the middle of a medical emergency, but a financial emergency. And if you are diagnosed with cancer and you need to find $50,000, well, I know that I could pull it out of my house if I needed to, if I had to. If I'm renting an apartment, that is not an option. So it's not one size fits all. I wonder about the viability of a federal plan for 50-year loans, but I don't hate the idea as someone who was in a 50-year loan from a private lending institution. That's all I'm saying.
I hear you. And I suppose if you're just trying to get in, it's kind of like those loans, those adjustable rate mortgages, where you knew that if you got that loan and that was your way into the house, you better find a way to refinance your way out of that before a balloon payment comes due, right?
Yes.
Same with this. If you got yourself locked into a 50-year loan, then find some way out of it, right?
Now, I guess the alternative is to have that first-time buyers program with some sort of credit or some sort of special privileges, which makes it financially easier. There are a number of organizations like NACA, and there are other like FHA and VHA, different loan programs which are out there to help specifically qualified buyers or first-time buyers, and we should not go away from that. I'm just saying that the 50-year aspect is not something that I'm going to dismiss out of hand. It is not the silver bullet, and it is not the solution. I think it could be one of many solutions to help younger buyers or first-time buyers, because I'm still of the opinion that home ownership is the most dependable way to ensure some degree of, I can't even call it generational wealth, but generational security, where you can help the generation after you. You can't do that leasing an apartment. You just can't do it. Delette says, I bought my house in Bodega Bay as a second home in 1985. I paid $177,000 for it. You
Wow.
cannot buy a house here in Bodega Bay for less
No.
than $1 million. You
Mhm.
can buy a house in another state. Well, but
Yeah.
not every, but that, I believe that's a luxury. I live in
Mhm.
California. I live in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. I live in Los Angeles County. My professional career is here. Now, I guess I can go ahead and move to Mississippi and get a palatial estate. But for the millions of people who don't have that option and don't have either a home which already has equity that you can sell, I don't know if that's a viable option. But yes, and here's where I'm always on my soapbox regarding capitalism. We all love capitalism, but these are some of the unfortunate realities concerning capitalism. What a house cost in 1975 is less than what it costs today. And what the house costs today, regardless of our misgivings, is going to be less than what it costs 20, 30 years from now. Land is finite. They're not making any more of it. And it's always going to be more and more expensive. And you're going to have landlords. We have rising population, and we're all going to need housing. And here in California, let me get on my soapbox for real. We've voted against rent control at least twice, maybe 3 times, where we have actively contributed to this financial situation that we see here, at least in California. I can't speak for other states. This unaffordability of housing here in California, where we want to be able to make as much money as possible, and we can and do in many respects, but the unintended consequences is that includes people who are selling real estate, that includes people who are landlords, and adds to the unaffordability of housing, specifically here in California and around the United States. You can go to Alabama, and the houses, what they cost now is much more than what it cost 20, 30 years ago. That's what it's always going to be. And to your point, Kim, I don't know if there is an answer to that. That is fundamentally baked into capitalism, where if I want, I can sell my house for $2 million. I live 3 miles from SoFi Stadium. In other words, it's appreciating in value because we've had a football stadium, and we have the Intuit Dome where the Clippers play, a basketball arena, all built in the past 5-6 years. So I've gained an equity just by sitting here in my
Mhm.
studio right now.
Right.
And are you going to tell
And if
me
you
that I can't sell my house for more?
and if you never had that 50-year mortgage, allegedly, right? If
Right.
that's how you got in, then you would never have that opportunity to build equity and build personal wealth.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. And
But
let me
but
just be transparent.
it
When I
still
bought that
does.
$340,000 townhouse, it was devalued and reset to $115,000. It was later sold for, I'm trying to remember, 400 and something thousand. That's how you develop generational wealth and grow. But you have to be able to get in the market. So
Yeah.
I am more sympathetic than most when it comes to home ownership and first-time home ownership. I supported George Bush and his housing initiative because I grew up in a household where that was always drilled into me. Home ownership was the key to generational wealth. So I don't
Sure.
hate this, and I don't dismiss it out of hand.
Yeah, I can see that it would be a good tool for people to get in, but I still feel like they're not addressing a whole 'nother piece of the pie, which is as we talk about $1 million homes, the $1 million homes that shouldn't be $1 million homes, right? That
Right,
have no
right.
business paying $1 million for this house, and I never would. Um, but it doesn't take into accountability the making homes more affordable on the other end, not just on the 50-year mortgage end, but the actual price of the home.
I don't
And I
know
don't
how
know
you
how.
do about that because are you going to federalize lumber? Are you going to federalize the builders? Are you going to have a federal system of houses built by the federal government,
Right.
which specifically are created to offset that? We have it on a lower level with Section 8 housing, but it's not actually being built by the federal government. We'd have to fundamentally transform the idea of home ownership and also wealth creation through home ownership. Right now, it's incentivized for you to sell your house at a higher value than when you bought it.
Sure.
And I don't know how you disincentivize that, because I'm going to get as much as I can for this house.
Well, you have city, yeah, that's true. And who's going to sell it for less just to be, be nice to the next generation, right? But on the other hand, you've got programs now in various cities and counties where, you have to have, if you're a developer, a certain portion of the homes that you build or the townhomes that you build or whatever it is have to meet the qualifications for affordable homes.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know if you can expand on that to help people, but it just seems like we're not attacking both sides of the problem.
You're right. And it's not an either or proposition. It's a both and. There are people who don't even think about owning a home. We're just talking about affordability of a residence, a domicile, some place to live. When we say that there's a housing shortage, we're not talking about the physical edifices or the structures. We're talking about the affordability housing shortage, where there's enough places for people to live, but there are not enough places to live that people can afford. And that's the complexity of the conversation. And I don't think American greed is ever going to overcome that. And since everything is profit motivated, including healthcare, we got to go to that next. This is that hamster wheel, that treadmill that I think we'll never get off of, because what was affordable in 1975 will never be affordable again. And that's inclusive of groceries. Now, the cost of eggs may not have quintupled in the past 20 years, but damn near close. And we were talking before the show about insurance. We had these fires here in California, and the cost of insurance, which you have to have, is going to double, if not triple for some people. And our houses didn't even burn down.
Yeah.
But you're paying into this insurance pot, which is going to care for everyone. And we pay for insurance, inclusive of car insurance, in the event that something might happen, and oftentimes does not happen. And if it does happen to someone else, or there's fraud elsewhere, we are left holding the bag, and we have to pay more to compensate for either the fraud or the legitimate disasters or accidents which do happen. All of this is connected. This is a systemic issue. It's not just a housing issue. It's groceries, it's gas, it's insurance, it's everything that we need as far as necessities. I'm not talking about the cost of cruises or air travel going up. I'm just talking about the things that are essential to you and me that we have to have, as in a roof over our head. And I'm not even talking about a 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom, a bathroom, 3-car garage. I'm just talking about shelter.
Sean says, good news on the affordability front, 50% of the food for 75% of the price. Excellent bargain if you're enumerate. And thank you for the contribution, Sean. Appreciate it.
He's not wrong. And it's so funny. We always talk about something being on sale. You can go to your favorite department store, big box retailer, and they promise you something is on sale. But in actuality, those prices were marked up before. And they've now brought it back to something which is lower than the original price, and it's still above the what they paid for it, the wholesale price. But it gives you the illusion or the feeling that you are saving money, but you're still getting less than whatever you had before. Look at the packaging of food. They call this shrinkflation, where you're getting smaller packages, less food for the same quoted price. The bag of potato chips still may be $1.50, but it's mostly air. And it's a smaller package of mostly air.
I don't really see the price of groceries has come down. Wasn't that the whole point of the last election? People were voting on the price of eggs. And I don't think that prices have really changed that much.
Well, there are two lies. One, I don't believe that they were voting on the price of eggs. I think they were voting because they didn't want that black woman to become president. That's first and foremost. Right. That was a ruse of plausibility as far as choosing one candidate over the other. And we've seen, since prices have not come down, and we've seen an explosion in ICE raids and all things unrelated to the affordability of America, that was a farce. That wasn't the genuine reasons why people were concerned about the future of the country. But it is a real issue. You know, the cost of groceries, it's never going to go down. I remember this as a child. And I'm weird, so I'm self-aware. But I used to buy these Hostess donuts, which were 6 in a pack.
Okay.
And I remember as a child, they were like 35 cents. And I saw when it got to 50 cents. And I loved them and I always eat them. And I saw when it got to 75 cents and $1. And I realized as a child that prices only move in one direction. The economy and affordability only moves in one direction. The cost of healthcare only moves in one direction. What it costs for that knee exam, that MRI in 1995 is far less than what it costs today. What it costs to go in and see the doctor, your primary care physician in 2009 or 2010 with the inception of Obamacare is less than what it is today. And those realities are never going to change. Now, I don't know how much those Hostess donuts are right now. They're probably like maybe $3 or $4. But the point is, it only moves in one direction and it will never go back. I'll give you a perfect example. Everyone, I hope everyone watching today is a fan of thrifty ice cream. I love thrifty ice cream. I love that I used to be able to buy thrifty ice cream for like 15 cents. And then they had thrifty ice cream and Rite Aid. And leave that comment for Luis up. I'm gonna come right back to that. I got something to say about that.
Okay.
But thrifty ice cream is never going back to 15 cents. And I remember my father would take me out for thrifty ice cream, and I loved it. The cost of making thrifty ice cream probably is not fundamentally different or more expensive today than it was back in 1977 or so. But because of all these other forces of distribution and marketing, whatever, it costs more to sell the same product in as many places. And you have shareholders with profit incentives, and you have revenues, earnings calls. All that figures into why everything costs more now than then. And it's never going back. So when we talk about the affordability of housing, it's inclusive of the unaffordability of healthcare, the unaffordability of groceries. It's all different branches on the same tree of trying to survive in America. Now, let me talk to Luis. Luis says, yes, Mo, Harris was a terrible candidate, not because she was not qualified, but because she was unelectable in red and purple states. And that's exactly what played out.
Mm-hmm.
Agree, disagree. What I mean, she was not a terrible candidate. I believe that America was not willing to elect a Black woman president. Not a woman, not a Black woman. And I think that put a ceiling on her candidacy because it wasn't a discussion or debate of who was more sane. It wasn't a discussion or debate of who was serious as a candidate and not necessarily prone to outlandish outbursts and getting us into a war. All the stuff that we're seeing right now. It was an unserious conversation in comparison of two people, in the way that Joe Biden had a horrible first debate with Donald Trump. And I think a reasonable person can acknowledge that. We should acknowledge how absolutely bonkers and bat-ish crazy Trump was in a debate with Kamala Harris. A reasonable person can acknowledge that reality.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And America, conspiracy theories aside, still chose Donald Trump. And that is more a statement on America than actually Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Like, for example, and I always relate everything to relationships and sports because there are analogies and comparisons all over that. You may see, and as a man, you will see, and I'm talking about men because we're so stupid. We are very transparent. A man will date and often marry relative to looks. We are visually oriented. And we'll see a man and he will date the proverbial and literal stripper. And there's an old saying, you don't marry the stripper because doesn't usually make a good wife, helpmate, spouse. And a man will disregard all common sense and pursue that which is not good for him or a good helpmate. And I see America in that same way. America chose Donald Trump against all good reason, common sense. You can put up the resumes. You can see that Donald Trump was at best a game show host. He was a narcissist. He was a racist back in the 1970s. He was a misogynist. All that was out there for everyone to see. And you saw what he did with COVID and how he performed after getting the job, undeserved, unqualified. And yet and still, America chose him again, despite all that. And it just says that America is stupid, not that Kamala Harris was unqualified.
But Mo, her laugh.
I know.
Her laugh,
cackle.
Mo, her cackle. And, she just seemed like she just wasn't so nice. And there's something about her, Mo. There's just something about, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop
just,
it.
Just call it what it is. And I think that's a good place for me. Tony, play the sounder. I'm changing subjects. I guess I'm not going to get the sounder.
No, Tony went away. But before we change topics, I do want to throw this out here because it is in regards to the unaffordability of America. Luis writes, extended payments for cars, homes equals typical U.S. solution. Create a problem, create a money-making industry around the problem rather than a solution. And thank you, Luis, for the contribution to the show.
Spot on. Spot on. And if you notice, every quote unquote proposed solution in no way inconveniences the moneymakers. This doesn't inconvenience the banks. This doesn't inconvenience the federal government. It allows, and this in the ABC report we started with, yes, you will be paying more interest. Yes, you will be paying more over the life of that 50-year mortgage, ostensibly, if you were to keep it for 50 years. And there is no loser as far as the federal government, assuming this is like a federal loan and the interest you pay. The original homeowner is not going to be a loser. No one loses in the sense of the people who are making money. And so they're trying to solve this problem while not inconveniencing anyone. I'm all for helping someone. And that's why I err on the side of I don't hate it, but it doesn't mean I love it, because it does not fundamentally address or solve the problem. It helps some people, and I'm all about helping some people, but it doesn't solve the problem. In the way that we talk about SNAP or we talk about any other federal subsidies, it doesn't solve the problem, but it does help some people. And I would rather help some people than help nobody.
Tony. Thanks, Tony.
It's supposed to say, thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, all right. Can I get the cool sounder with Mark Thompson show with a little gospel music?
I don't know if I have it.
Tony should have it.
Tony has
the Mark Thompson show.
He had an internet connectivity issue, so I don't have any. I don't have any Tony. I have
it's
that.
A conspiracy.
I know.
Everybody's working against me. There it is.
There you go.
I'll take it.
Okay.
I'll take it. But talking about how America views women, and I think that's a good way where I can segue to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I would liken to, and I don't want to offend anyone, but damn it, I'm just going to say it. She reminds me of an Alzheimer's patient. She reminds me of someone with cognitive decline. And if you have ever dealt with someone, they will have, with those issues, they will have moments of lucidity. They will have moments in which they seem completely normal. They will have you believe, at least for that momentary conversation, that all is right in the world. And they seem like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you have Alzheimer's because you sound just like you always have. That's what I look at when I see Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is sounding sensible in this particular moment. But then if you keep talking to her, you realize that she's still incredibly insane, crazy with a capital K in a clinical sense. But here's what people are not telling you. Have you noticed, for all the insults that Marjorie Taylor Greene has, all the criticism that she's had for the for Donald Trump, the president and the man, and also the Trump administration, there have been no insults lobbed back her way. There have been no comments about nasty woman. There have been no comments or criticisms of Marjorie Taylor Greene by the president. That, I believe, is intentional, and that should be highlighted. And in my work, I've never had a chance to interview Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I have interviewed Ann Coulter. And there's a correlation here. Ann Coulter is very similar in the rhetoric, her views on illegal immigration and all that. So you know that she is super far right. You would think that she's in exact alignment with all things Donald Trump. If you research what Ann Coulter has had to say about Donald Trump, she has been vulgar, she has been insulting, she has been downright nasty, my word, to Donald Trump just about every step of the way, insulting him as a man, insulting him as a president, insulting him as a person, all of that. Just very inflammatory. But you will not find any negative response from Donald Trump regarding Ann Coulter or anything she said. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look for it. You will not find any criticism of Ann Coulter. And most of the times when Ann Coulter says something very disrespectful about Donald Trump, he doesn't even acknowledge it. I believe it's because that there are certain individuals who know things about this man, and he knows that they know about this, about him, that keeps him from going off. Because what is his pattern? When someone criticizes him, he tries to insult them as deeply as possible. Talk about their low IQ, being stupid, being nasty, whatever. He has nothing to say about that regarding Ann Coulter and also Marjorie Taylor Greene. For example, Tony, if you're back, let's see that Marjorie Taylor, that Donald Trump answered to the question of Marjorie Taylor Greene.
So he isn't back, but I think I can pull it off. Let me try to do it here. Here's what he says.
But I have to view the presidency as a worldwide situation. Not
take it back to the beginning,
we could
please.
have a world that's on. I don't know what happened to Marjorie. She's a nice woman, but I don't know what happened. She's lost her way, I think. But I have to view the presidency as a worldwide situation, not locally. I mean, we could have a world that's on fire where wars come to our shores very easily if you had a bad president. We had a horrible president, and we ended up with Russia, Ukraine, and we ended up with other disasters, too. Don't forget, I put out 8 wars, 9 to come. I think I'll get the other one taken care of, but I put out 8 wars. And look at the damage that Russia, Ukraine has done to us as a country. I mean, we spent $350 billion. We're not spending any money anymore. Now they pay us through NATO. You know, I got NATO to go from 2% to 5%. Well, that's very important. When you're president, you really sort of have to watch over the world because you're going to be dragged into it. Otherwise, you're going to be dragged into a world war. I think if I weren't president, first of all, that war would have never happened if I was president. And if I weren't president, that war could have led to World War III. It won't. It's not going to anymore. But when I first got in, I said, wow, this situation could lead to World War III. And I got NATO together. I got everybody together. But with all of that, I passed a great, big, beautiful bill, which is the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country. So when somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now catering to the other side, I don't know what, I guess she's, got some kind of an act going, but I'm surprised at her. But when somebody like Marjorie goes over and starts making statements like that, it shows she doesn't know. I don't devote a lot of my time.
You notice there were no insults there. There were no sharp barbs about Marjorie Taylor Greene and insulting her looks or
new nicknames or
no nickname, none of that. And that is intentional. And I can't tell you exactly why, but I know that there's certain people he's hands off with. And part of the reason why Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I use Ann Coulter as an example, feel free to criticize him without worrying about a call for a primary challenge or some sort of ugly response that he usually only reserves for women specifically. There's a theme as far as his disrespect of women, and it doesn't necessarily need to be someone who's a Democrat. I mean, he's done it to other Republican women. He's done it to the wives of Republican men, but he doesn't do it to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and that to me is significant in this moment where he allows no criticism from anyone, much less doesn't respond with a level of civility and kindness. You know, the worst he says is she's lost her way.
Yeah.
Not and then you reminded me of this, Kim, and then she has her moment of lucidity, and then she goes back into her crazy.
It's almost like someone was whispering in her ear when she, they sometimes they'll say, if you don't feel it yourself on an issue, you don't really understand it. So it started with her realizing that she was going to have to pay more for her adult children to have health care, right?
Yep.
That had aged out of their college. You can stay on your parents' health care for a certain amount of time. And when she realized how much health care was going to cost for her children, she realized, oh, America's got a problem. I suddenly understand. And then it was like someone whispered in her ear, oh, now that you're on board with this, let me share some more facts with you. Now that you seem okay, and
Yep.
you seem receptive to actually hearing the facts for Americans and what we're dealing with. Let's talk. And it's almost like that happened because she's still crazy. She hasn't completely turned the crazy corner. She's now on the backs of the Trump pardons for all of his co-defendants in the coup. She's asking to please free Tina Peters. Do you remember who Tina Peters is?
Tina Peters is one of those people who's probably more crazy than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Tina Peters, that was that former clerk of Mesa County.
That's right.
She was a part of the Stop the Steal movement. And prosecutors alleged at one point that she stole a county employee's security badge to help a man associated with Mike Lindell, My Pillow, gain access to the county's voter systems. So she is reaching back to Tina Peters and Stop the Steal, Mike Lindell, My Pillow, to remind you, I'm still Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm still the kook that you always knew me to be.
So here's a woman who's elected, who's serving as the county clerk, who is convicted of, right, allowing this guy to use a security badge and get into county offices and pose as a county employee to take copies of the election system's hard drive before and after a software upgrade. She's basically supposed to ensure that the people of her county have a voice in the vote. And she does the exact opposite. She cheats. She helps people not have a voice. And Marjorie Taylor Greene says free Tina Peters.
And just to remind you, I'm still Marjorie Taylor Greene. Don't let the Trump criticism fool you. Right. I'm still that woman. Now, let me, if Tony's not back, because I need my Mark Thompson sound or a harp or something. I'm changing subjects.
Okay, hold on. I have it. Okay. Wait. It's coming.
All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There you go. I
waited all week for that.
Do you have a hair tie?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the air traffic controllers.
Let's talk about it indeed. Yes.
We know the president has threatened air traffic controllers due to the shutdown. Many are not coming back to work. Many have retired. Many have called in sick. And we know how that's impacted you, how it's impacted me, how it's impacted air travel as we know it. I know that I'm not in any rush to travel anywhere. I know that I don't feel comfortable traveling right now because of what has been going on with the shutdown. And I know the Senate has voted to end the shutdown, but we are still far from back to normal. And our air travel is far from back to normal. And I can't help but think when I see that the president has threatened to dock the pay of air traffic controllers who are calling in sick for a shutdown that I would have to say he has a significant role in. He's saying you have to get back to work now. No, they don't. No one has to go back to work and work for free. Now, you can reopen the government and you can restore their back pay, but you can't threaten people. I mean, this is straight out of the Ronald Reagan playbook. Because I remember, I'm old enough to remember, Kim, can't speak for you. I'm old enough to remember when the air traffic controllers went on strike. And then President Ronald Reagan said, okay, F y'all, I'm firing y'all. This is reminiscent on that. And so, but Trump said on a post on Truth Social that air traffic controllers who, quote, didn't take any time off during the shutdown were great patriots, worthy of a $10,000 bonus. I don't know where that money's supposed to come from. But those who had to call out, he said, should pay a price for it. For those, quote, now I'm quoting the president, for those that did nothing but complain and took time off, even though everyone knew they would be paid in full shortly into the future, I am not happy with you. You didn't step up to help the USA, close quote. You know, the molder of consensus, that great American patriot, Donald Trump. And of course, he blames the Democrats and, you know, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. It's the same random capitalization, exclamation points, and, you know, rantings of a crazy man. Kim, I think you're on mute.
My apologies. Yeah, they're trying to show the Truth Social post right here. So yeah, he's going to recommend the $10,000 bonus for each person who's an air traffic controller who didn't call in sick during the shutdown. And for everybody else, as you mentioned, Mo, I am not happy with you. You did not step up to help the USA against what he says in caps is the fake Democrat attack that was only meant to hurt our country. You will have a negative mark, at least in my mind, against your record.
Who is this guy? Look, I have two fathers, okay? My father, who art cremated, and my father, thou art in heaven. I don't know who this man is, thinking that he can tell me or anyone else, I'm not happy with you. Or, you know, I'm angry at you.
You have a negative mark, as if that's going to follow you through your life to the pearly gates.
Yeah, he says, it's just like a gold star. Do I get a progress report at the end of the day? And here, before I get too far afield, he's promising these air traffic controllers $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that's supposed to happen. I don't know where the money's coming from. I happen to know a little bit about civics, power of the purse strings, got to come through Congress. Same for any $2,000 check that he's promising to all Americans. And it's so weird to me. It's strange because for a number of election cycles, presidential election cycles, we heard that the Democrats always want free stuff. And this guy never stops promising free money. Never stops. If he's not promising free money, he's trying to sell you things for you to spend your money for his benefit. It's one or the other.
You want to buy a Bible?
No, I don't want to buy a Bible. I don't want to buy some gold shoes. I don't want to buy a meme coin. I don't want to buy anything that has anything to do with him.
Nothing. He then says, if you want to leave service in the near future, please do not hesitate to do so with no payment or severance of any kind. You will quickly be replaced by true patriots who will do a better job in the brand new state-of-the-art equipment that we are ordering. So it's like he doesn't understand that what he has here is a shortage of air traffic controllers. And instead of pissing people off and saying, if you don't like it, there's the door, you know, maybe try to keep these people and realize that you just made them work without pay, get second jobs to afford their families instead of trying to screw around with people.
Or how about this? If you're angry or disappointed that people are not going to work or calling in sick or retiring early, if you have an issue with that, don't threaten their jobs. All you're going to do is push them further out quicker. If I was considering retirement and in the meantime, I've been calling in sick, well, hell, I might as well just go ahead and retire. Or I might as well just go and get another job anyhow, because you as the president obviously don't have my back. You as the president helped create this situation. You played a role in it. And now you're saying I'm the bad guy because I need to provide for my family.
Right.
You're promising $2,000 to Americans because you obviously acknowledge that people are suffering. People are hurting. people are in a financial situation. So you're promising $2,000. So you're aware on some level. And then you're saying, well, air traffic controllers, you need to get your ass back to work. You can't call in sick. I thought you just acknowledged that we're all hurting. In the meantime, the 1st of November rolled around. What does that mean? That means my car payment is due. That means my mortgage is due. That means my rent is due. I can't spend 10 hours at a job which is not paying me, as opposed to calling in sick, which I have a right to do by law, and also get paid at a later date, and then also not necessarily forsake my family, and maybe I can drive for Uber for 10 hours at a time, which I know some people are doing.
Did you see that clip of Stephen A. Smith, who was hosting a roundtable or some type of panel discussion with Republicans on stage? And
Yes.
this air traffic controller stands up and he says, "Listen, I have to pay tuition to send my kid to school. I guess the child goes to private school or something. I have to, I have obligations to meet for my children. And so he said, I'm exhausted and I'm about to go drive around in an Uber so that I can make money to send my child to school." That's what these folks are dealing with. And here's Donald Trump saying, if you didn't come to work, you're the bad guy. I mean, the poor leadership, poor leadership.
But that goes back to what I was saying about Kamala Harris. America chose him and thought that he was either going to be different or a better option than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, all she needed to do for me was be sane, because I don't want someone who's insane becoming president. And
as Mark
Tony,
says,
I know you got that Stephen A. Smith video, so go ahead and play that as just a point of reference and context, so we can see Stephen A. Smith acting ass.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a break.
And walk off the stage.
Hello, my name is Jack Chris, and I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I'm an air traffic controller for the Federal Aviation Administration. Been there 16 years. I've also been through the Obama shutdown and also the Trump shutdown in the previous, and my question is, under the current political climate, do you think that this shutdown could actually be longer than the previous shutdowns due to the external pressures, political pressures that we're having an effect right now? Because I am actually driving DoorDash when I get off work just to kind of make sure I can pay for my daughter's tuition.
I don't think Washington understands how ticked off we truly are. We're listening to this kind of stuff while a young man walked up to the microphone and said that he had to leave here to go and work on DoorDash to help pay for his daughter's tuition. Meanwhile, everybody up here getting paid. But he ain't. It's this kind of stuff right here. That's how you know, and I'm not accusing any of you directly or personally of feeling this way. I'm just talking about the apparatus that is Washington, the nation's capital. This is why you have so many Americans, excuse my language, so pissed off at Washington, because somehow, some way you get to have these conversations, engage in specific elements of it to talk about what we need to do to get things better. Our debt is $37.8 trillion. Somehow, some way, the taxpayer's been paying this, been throwing money, because we all look at our check, and it's been going to the government. And somehow, some way, you're supposed to be doing something constructive and productive enough to make sure that we don't have that kind of deficit. It isn't happening. A government shutdown is going on right now. A man has to work on DoorDash when he's really an air traffic controller that we applauded. And we're up here talking about how much some money is going to cost. And the only person that don't have a check coming is him. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a break.
Okay. All right. Intellectually, I can agree with the point he was making about the misplaced blame and the ineffective nature of our federal government. But Stephen A. Smith is so freaking performative with the whole walking off stage, and the yelling and the screaming, the histrionics, that his own point folded in on itself because he kept making it about him. The issue is accurate, where you have air traffic controllers, going back to the story, who deserve to be paid and obviously serve in a role which not only crosses our national security interests, but also our aviation general, as far as just travel interests. It should be sacrosanct as far as protecting just that industry, and we don't. And then you have the president further defecate on those air traffic controllers, chastising them, criticizing them, belittling them,
telling them to leave.
For making necessary decisions. I mean, do you actually think that air traffic controllers care what the president may think about them while they are trying to make sure that there is the proverbial food on the table, that they have the means to provide for their family? Not at all. And that's why I think that this country is just an unserious nation. We are not even dealing with the elephant in the room. Sorry to use so many cliches, but you have the president who's not in his right mind, who's not in good health, who is trying to tell the air traffic controllers, I don't think highly of you, or I think poorly of you because you're calling in sick, because you will not work for free for the benefit of the government. And that's supposed to supersede their own needs. I mean, it's not even funny to me. It's beyond ridiculous.
It's the inability yet again to have any empathy, to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. I look at that guy and I think, all right, I'm in his shoes. I got to send my kid to school. If I call in sick, I can take a DoorDash shift and I'm able to send my child to school this month, or however the tuition.
It's not a question.
And if I don't take the DoorDash shift and I go to my other job where I'm not getting a paycheck, then she doesn't go to school. So what's the choice? The choice is make the money to send the kid to school, right? That's what I'm doing as a parent.
Yeah, and the president doesn't know your name, so it's not personal. He's not even considerate.
President would never have to have the, either this or that moment. The president, has never had a moment in his life where he had to worry about money.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he was filing bankruptcy, he had a mansion to live in. So there was never a moment where Trump ever had to consider, if I do this, my kid goes to school, and if I don't, she doesn't. Complete lack of empathy, a complete lack of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and realize people are having to make some very hard decisions.
It's more than a lack of empathy. I say it's a lack of dignity, decency, and decorum. And let's not forget, and I should have started with this is Veterans Day. You talk about people who make these sacrifices for the country. And if not for some private donors, our military servicemen and women wouldn't be getting paid either. So this is a lack of understanding the sacrifices that people make on a daily basis. For someone who is so concerned about the cost of groceries and the cost of real estate, he misses the stuff which is right in front of him. He would have gained more by saying nothing. If he could have just said, thank you, air traffic controllers, those of you who are making these sacrifices, he would have gained so much more by just saying that than as opposed to belittling them for making decisions that he's never had to make in his life. To your point, he is a broken man. He is incapable of exhibiting any dignity, decency, or decorum, or empathy. And we knew that when he was running for president the first time. And again, that goes back to Kamala Harris. America still chose him despite all of these deficiencies. They would rather have all of these deficiencies than have that black woman as president. And I personally believe that Kamala Harris never had any chance of winning. I just, because I am more critical of America, and I am more I'm more realistic about the history of America. And although I can point to Barack Obama and say, hey, America can surprise us every now and then, the response to Barack Obama being elected president twice led us to Donald Trump. And since we're in the era of Trump, there's no room for a Kamala Harris right now. Maybe 15, 20 years from now, it wouldn't be her, it would be someone else. But there's no room for her now.
There was no room for a Hillary Clinton. Women knew the night Hillary Clinton didn't get elected. It was a giant collective slap in the female face. We all knew it. And we all
Yes.
felt it that night, and we felt it again. I allowed myself to hope. I remember Mark saying, I'd vote for a ham sandwich over Trump. We saw what he did before. And so I thought, well, maybe America's ready for a woman. Maybe since we had Obama, America's even ready for a Black woman. I mean, I know I am. So let's do it. And still another collective slap in the female face of America. So we're not ready. We're not
No,
ready. And so the Democrats have to come up with some kind of candidate that ticks all the boxes just to, be able to outdo this whole MAGA movement. We've got to pick somebody who's what? White, male, Christian, comes from a red state, like an Andy Bashir, maybe?
Correct. I'll stop you when you're wrong. But you know what? That's what we think. I would love to bring in now our next guest, David Cay Johnston, Pulitzer Prize winning author and investigative journalist, founder of DC Report, professor at Rochester Institute of Technology, and frequent guest here on the Mark Thompson Show. David Cay Johnston, it's a pleasure. This is the first time I've had a chance to talk to you. I've seen you any number of times in your other media appearances, but I'm actually tickled to be able to talk to you now. How are you, sir?
I'm thinking.
Can you not hear me?
There we go. Now I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Now
good.
I can hear you. Well, thank you for greetings. By the way, I thought you were quite spot on about the chances that Kamala Harris would have in the next election. We should recognize that she lost by 1.5 percentage points, which is a very narrow margin.
Mhm.
But yeah, that would not be the person to run. And my guess is at this stage of the game, the most likely candidate for the Democrats in 2028 is named Gavin Newsom.
If you were to prognosticate, and there's no way to know, he can't. David, can you not hear me? Okay, we're
Can't hear
having
you.
Okay, Tony, do you know what might be going on here?
Hey, David, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't hear Mo
This
Kelly.
is the second time this has happened. What the
Okay,
hell? Here, let me try something here, Mo. Try now talking.
test 1, 2, 3. David,
I
can you hear me?
You can hear me.
And Mo, try talking?
Yeah, I'm talking. We just can't hear each other for some reason.
What is
All right,
that?
Kim, I'm going to call you in for a second. Kim, I want you to continue the conversation. I'm going to
Here I am.
reboot my system.
Hi. Can you hear
and
me,
see
David Cay
what
Johnston?
happens.
I can hear you, Kim, just fine.
Okay. All right, then. I'll be your translator. Go on.
All right. So anyway, I think as of this stage that Gavin Newsom, who's now calling Donald the nodder in chief or something like that, is the most likely candidate. He's got a solid economic track record for his state, and he's shown an ability to stand up smartly to Donald. The other logical candidate is a guy, J.B. Pritzker. I don't know how much his weight would turn off some people. He's not nearly as big as William Howard Taft, who was president 115 years ago, 120 years ago. Andy Bashir is just not a well-known person around the country. But, we've elected presidents from small states. Bill Clinton is an example.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I just, you say Gavin Newsom, but I kind of look at Kamala Harris being from California and that having, been something people could hold against her as well. So maybe Gavin Newsom isn't going to be the one. He'll be seen as a, too liberal from California, too out of touch from a wealthy blue state. I don't know if that's a ding against him or not.
Maybe, but if you look at what happened last week in the voting, and not just the big races, Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City, clearly there's a great deal of anger among people, including Republicans, who supporters who said, "Hey, I signed up for various things with Donald Trump, but not for this. Not for toddlers in diapers being put in zip ties, not for grabbing children on their way to school." Not for saying we're going to go to war in Venezuela, and certainly not for all of this profiteering and Trump wanting to put his visage on both sides of a coin. So there is no heads and tails. There's just heads. And that's going to be the important issue, is effectively, I believe, standing up to Donald Trump, combined with the Democrats have to come up with a message along the lines of, this is what we'll do for you economically. And, the things they've got handed to them. I mean, Donald Trump has now literally gone to court to not provide food to people. He's gone after Governor Tony Evers of Wisconsin for using state money to make sure people got their full SNAP benefits and say, no, you have to take that back. The Democrats have a long history of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. But if they can't overcome this, then they ought to pack it in and go away. It should be relatively easy. And all of this assumes Donald is alive in November of 28. I hope he lives a very long life to see what's going to happen after he's out of the White House, assuming we are able to overcome his dictatorship. And I don't think J.D. Vance is electable. I think that he has a snowball's chance in hell of being elected.
Let's see if you can hear Mo now.
David, can you hear me now by chance?
Yeah, I hear you now, clear as a bell.
Beautiful.
All right. Maybe it's just my system. I don't know if you covered this yet, but earlier, as in like yesterday, we saw these presidential pardons, more symbolic than substantive, handed out by Donald Trump, basically sending, I think, a message to his supporters that everything done in service and support of me, even though illegal, I have your back. What was your read on that?
Oh, that's exactly the right place. There are two standards of justice here. One for people who Donald likes or who give money to Donald, and one for everybody else. I mean, Donald Trump, remember, spent a decade of his life involved up to his eyeballs with one of the biggest cocaine traffickers and marijuana traffickers in America. He did extraordinary favors for him that make absolutely no sense whatsoever unless they were in business together. And in that case, everything he did makes perfect sense. And that's all explained in my book, The Making of Donald Trump, that came out in 2016. And I wrote about it for years before that. But Trump has always affiliated himself with criminals. He has always gone out of his way gratuitously to do business with criminals. And look who he's pardoned. He says we have to kill all these men in boats who we think are drug traffickers. Some of them are clearly fishermen, have nothing to do with the drug business. And yet, who does he pardon? He pardons the Silk Road guy, the biggest facilitator of money laundering for drug traffickers in the world. He's pardoned numerous people who were drug traffickers. He just pardoned the Binance guy after he put a fortune in the hands of the Trump family. He's clearly selling pardons. The problem with this is there's no enforcement mechanism in the Constitution except for impeachment. So long as the Republicans control that House, there can't be an impeachment. And at some point, we're almost certain to get the Epstein files, unless Pam Bondi has been stupid enough to destroy them. When that happens, two things should happen. One is Donald Trump will say, "Oh, it's fake. It's AI. You can't believe these pictures of me. Don't pay any attention to them." The second thing that should happen is a fair number of Republicans who know perfectly well that Trump is bad for the country but are afraid of losing their office, especially Senate Republicans, need to be pressured to remove him from office.
Do you actually believe that Donald Trump would not, when I say Donald Trump, the Trump administration would not go as so far as deleting some of the Epstein files or the more embarrassing or incriminating files? And I say that as in running parallel to the idea of a commutation or a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right. Well, he's never going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, let's be clear, because she would then lose her Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination and could be called by state prosecutors, civil litigants, or Congress. And if she refused to answer a question, she could be jailed and prosecuted for that. He's going to grant her clemency because she retains her Fifth Amendment privileges. So on the broader question of destroying documents, I wouldn't put anything past these people. I've been reading up on the rules of federal criminal procedure to make sure I have them correctly, because I teach law, but I'm not a lawyer. And two things I'm struck by. One I've mentioned on this show before. The estate of Jeffrey Epstein is entitled to the return of everything that was taken that isn't contraband, and to copies of those things that may be. Now that there is no crime to be prosecuted because the statute of limitations have run, I see no reason for the government to not return the files. And if the Epstein estate were to go to court, I think the courts would uphold their entitlement to them, with one exception. When there's no possibility of a prosecution, the government, for the efficiency and economy of the judicial system, can destroy records. And so I hope when Pam Bondi or Kash Patel next appears before a congressional committee, the first question from a Democrat is, will you guarantee that you will not destroy any of the Epstein files? That should be the first question. And if they start dodging it, then people should be very concerned about this behavior.
But you have to know, given what they've demonstrated right now, that they're not concerned with consequences. They have gone before Congress.
I
lied
agree
under
about
oath.
that. I think it's a real danger here that they may do this, but at a minimum, you do what you can do. So if you're journalists, we do our best to make a record. That's what we do. And if you're a member of Congress, you want to make a record. We've put them on notice. There may be, in the civil litigation by the Florida lawyer who represents many of the young women, and remember, the estimate is there are roughly 1,000 young women who were trafficked.
Yes.
That a preservation order. If you're in litigation, it's a standard practice that you get an order that says, you must retain and preserve all emails, financial records, ledger sheets, checks, invoices, stuff like that. And that already may have been obtained. But even if it is, these people are so lawless, they're so arrogant. I mean, they tore down a third of the White House.
Yeah. Look, I tend to be pessimistic and cynical, but I try to be more, I'll say, Christian-like when I discuss the health of this president. And you made mention of his health struggles in the moment that I was away. But I did want to ask you, I am of the opinion that I'm not sure that this president, given what we see regarding his health, is not even a lock to make to the year 2027.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've known Donald now for more than 37 years. He's not in good health. If you notice when he falls asleep, it's usually about an hour and a half after mealtime, which is suggestive. I'm not a doctor, but it's suggestive that he's diabetic, which would make perfect sense. He doesn't exercise. He sits all the time, and he's grossly overweight. And if you believe he only weighs 235 pounds, I have a bridge I want to sell you in Brooklyn. He is clearly showing signs of significant cognitive decline. The zigzag when he walked in Alaska, when he met Putin, and then the way he wandered off like a doddering dementia patient in Japan until the new prime minister went over and took him by the arm and brought him back. And we've seen plenty of footage of him in the Oval Office where he's clearly not connected with what's going on around. That combined with the swelling in the ankles and whatnot, and the fact that Donald has never exercised. He's ridden a golf cart when he was a young man. I mean, so he was a high school athlete, but not since then. Suggests strongly that his health may end his life before his term ends. I want Donald to stay alive because if we get out of this, I want him to have to live through what's going to follow, what should have followed after his first term. If Merrick Garland, instead of being a Boy Scout, had aggressively said day one as Attorney General, you go investigate this and get going instead of dilly-dallying and waiting, because like Robert Mueller, he's a Boy Scout. This is not a time for Boy Scouts. This is a time for serious, aggressive prosecutions of people. And clearly this is bothering some people. We just saw a general resign. He hasn't spoken publicly, but people around him have all indicated to well-known, highly competent military affairs reporters that he left because of the illegal orders to murder people in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. We know that some of these people were merely fishermen. And, Kelly, I watched an interview, or heard it on the radio, someone defending the killing of these people, saying, well, if they were fishermen, why are they out there in the middle of the night? Oh, I don't know, because fish in the Caribbean in the daytime swim down to where the sun doesn't shine so they don't get eaten by predators. And at night, they come up to the surface to feed on jellyfish, plankton, and other things. That's why you go out fishing in the middle of the night. The ability of people who are Trump believers to pretzel the facts and to come up with some justification is extraordinary. And look at all of the ships and Marines that we have marshaled off the coast of Venezuela. This from the president who wants the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes. I want to connect this because if, for the reasons that you've highlighted and elucidated, that the president should die in office, what are the political implications? Does that automatically mean the end of MAGA and its hold on Republican members of Congress? Where does it go from there if we go down that path?
You know, there are people in America who believe and will tell you Hitler got it right. We saw them in Charlottesville 6 years ago. And I'm sorry, 9 years ago almost. There will be, Trumpism will be around 100 years after you and I are in our graves. He has unleashed something that's always been here. I mean, nobody ever went broke underestimating the depth of racism in this country.
Right.
And those of us who thought, as I certainly did, that we had made enormous progress post-World War II in civil rights, gender rights, etc., Donald just showed it's a veneer, and he just peeled off the top, and here's all the rotten wood underneath it. I mean, we literally have a Supreme Court Justice, Brett Kavanaugh, who said authorities can stop you based on the color of your skin. That's how deep and willfully blind Brett Kavanaugh is to allow this. So if Trump were to die before his term runs out, J.D. Vance automatically becomes president. I'm certain he's not electable because, among other things, to the MAGA crowd, his wife is unacceptable. She's East Indian, and to them, not white. And he has no charisma or charm or anything else. He's a spineless mouse. So all the Democrats have to do, were Trump to die, which I hope he doesn't, is to run someone who is electable. And that's almost certainly going to be a white male, like it or not. I mean, remember, politics is the art of the possible. So in the past few days, there's been a lot of criticism of Barack Obama. Why didn't you get us universal health care? Because he couldn't. He couldn't get that through Congress. So he got the best thing he could through Congress. And in the upcoming elections, where Texas has tried to destroy the districts of black Democrats, notably Congresswoman Crockett, well, you may have to run a white person, male or female, or a Latino to get that seat. But be focused on the immediate crisis right now, because we can't fix anything if we don't save our democracy. You got to be very practical about all of this. And practicality makes you make choices you don't want to make. Think like a military leader in World War II who had to sacrifice a bunch of soldiers knowing they would die in order to achieve a different goal so we'd win the war. Yeah. It's the same fundamental, terrible choice you have to make to get somewhere else. And serious strategic thinking and doing the work, that's what matters. Doing the work. Get people registered and get them to the polls.
In the case of saving democracy, we know that this, in the past 48 hours or so, there have been 8 Democrats who defected to reopen the government. They've given wide and various sundry reasons as far as why they defected. From where I sit, the Democrats did not get anything as we talk about healthcare and the unaffordability of it. Are the Democrats as a party doing what they need to do, could be doing in this moment to save democracy and push back against the Trump administration?
Yeah, I'm going to totally disagree with you about this. Okay.
Okay.
Yours is the most widely held view of this. I have no question about that. But let me suggest, first of all, it was only 5 Democrats, because 3 of them had already said, we want to go with the Republicans and pass the continuing resolution, even though it didn't meet the standard of continuing resolution because it introduced new cuts to the Affordable Care Act. As a result of this, though, is this settlement, the Republicans have agreed to put more money into SNAP. That is a big thing. To get $1 more for SNAP when Donald Trump has gone to court to kill SNAP benefits to people, that's a big victory, and it shows a schism within the Republicans. Secondly, John Thune from South Dakota, the Republican majority leader, agreed he would hold a vote on continuing the Obamacare or Affordable Care Act tax credits. Now, he's now in a box. If they have the vote, it allows the Democrats to say, hey, you voted to take health care away from 17 million people, many of them working poor people who have jobs. And if he backs out of the deal and doesn't hold a vote, and I'm sure Trump will pressure him to do that, oh, you guys are such cowards. You can't even trust your word. You didn't keep your word.
David, I have to jump in there. They don't care about their word not mattering.
No, it's the voters, though, that gives the Democrats something to take to the voters. And they need to be able to take to the voters, this man is not helping you. He is hurting you. And if you elect us, we'll actually help you. And so now it may turn out that the Democrats are unable to turn this into something to benefit themselves because they're just terrible at messaging. You know, the people in the Lincoln Project, the Republican consultants who I know a little bit personally, they're trying to tell the Democrats, here's how to do this. And the Democrats won't listen to them, but they should, because they're very good at how to market and they're very good at tricking and deceiving people. In this case, they're being straightforward with folks. But I think there's a very good chance here that what's happened with the vote, with the opening up the government, will benefit the Democrats. There's one other issue in this. When did the ball start to change? When did we start to see movement in the Senate to get over the 60-vote filibuster and get some Democrats and independents to come across? When people with means were affected, with the reducing of flights by just 4 percentage points. That's not a big, huge cut. Donald Trump could have kept the planes flying. All he had to do is say, we are going to take military air controllers and send them to civilian airports, and they're going to fill in so we have a full complement of air traffic controllers and every flight's going to go. He didn't do that. Just as he said, I want you to not provide food or health care to poor people. And so the people who moved, the 5 senators who moved, they include a senator from Nevada, at least one of them. And Nevada is a city that's almost entirely dependent on air traffic for its business. So is Orlando, Florida, with all those amusement parks. So you cut flights to those places or make people afraid they won't have a flight. Business just goes to hell in a handbasket. Americans, by and large, don't care that much about the poor or the working poor, but they sure care about themselves, and corporate America cares. We need to get our salesperson to this place. And what do you mean we can't get a flight for that person? So that's when things begin to move. And to some degree, you got to say, well, the people around Trump, vicious and evil as they are, they understand the levers of power in this country, and they understood aviation, like food, was a lever they could weaponize.
Let's say everything you're saying is true, and I don't necessarily have all the data to dispute it, but let's say everything you are saying right now is true and accurate. I, on the outside, can say, well, what's the point of the shutdown at all if you knew that it was a certain point that you were going to cave or you couldn't go any further because you and your constituents in Nevada and other places, New Hampshire, would not allow this to go on for a long time?
That is a really great question. And I would say the answer to that is, if the Democrats hadn't said, we will not go along with taking away health care from 17 million people, we'd be a lot more critical of them than we are. You have to draw a line somewhere. And the Democrats have been trying since 1948 to get universal health care, which would, by the way, save over $1 trillion a year for this country. It would have enormous beneficial consequences. Racism and punishing the poor are very expensive things to do. But to those people, who don't want to live in Donald Trump's magical Make America White Again society, they'll bear that price, or they don't know what it is. They don't care. But the Democrats, I think, did the right thing by saying we're not going to go along, even though at the end of the day, right at the beginning, anybody who understood this knew that Donald Trump would never sign a bill continuing the extra tax credits for the poor and the working poor in this country. And you got to sort of admire the evil duplicity here of the Heritage Foundation people. The Affordable Care Act was their idea. It's just like car insurance. Everybody has to have car insurance because otherwise you get what are called free riders, people who don't buy insurance and their accidents, and the rest of us have to pick up the cost. So it was their idea. They now disown it. Oh, no, that isn't what we did at all. Nonsense. This is their idea. Universal insurance. They couldn't kill it with a vote. They wouldn't be able to kill it if it came to a vote because it would be very damaging to some of the senators or Congress people. So they found a backdoor way to do it. Oh, we'll take away the extra subsidies for 17 million people. That will shrink the number of people. That means that the unit cost of healthcare, every time you go to the doctor or a prescription is written, or the cost per bed in a hospital will go up dramatically. My health insurance as a professor at Rochester Institute of Technology will be up 17% next year. We've seen people on TV and on the radio who say, well, I've got my notice and my bill's going to go from $200 a month to $1,400 a month. That's 700%, not 17, 700. And it means we can't have health care. And so they found a backdoor way to kill the Affordable Care Act. And if they succeed, here's what the future is going to be. Only people who work for fairly large, profitable corporations or who are wealthy are going to be able to afford quality health care. It's as simple as that.
We've discussed that here, and David Cay Johnston, I'm sorry that my time is running short with you, but I if I were to make an assumption, I think that you have more belief and faith in our federal government than I do. I don't believe that the Republicans care about health care and how it disenfranchises people. I don't think they care about the increase in costs.
Most of them don't. I mean, there are some who do, but most of them are not. And all of them would rather cower to Donald than stand up and do the right thing. But, you know, I'm an incurable optimist. Nobody in this day and age, as I did, has 8 children unless you're an incurable optimist. As my 2 youngest daughters heard me on the radio one day and they started tittering to each other. And I said, you know, when I got off the radio, I said, what's that? And they said, did you just get asked, Dad, if you get shot by a firing squad? And I said, yeah, in the second round. And they erupted in laughter. One of them said, you're even more optimistic than we thought.
I hope that you are correct as far as what the Democrats...
No, not about the firing squad.
No. That the Democrats are pursuing the correct course of action here. I don't know if I have the evidence to support that as of now. We'll see how it plays out in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Democrats are absolutely capable of turning this into mud. Maybe they can shine up a golden nugget out of this, and we'll see. And it's been great to be with you. Take care.
Professor David Cay Johnston, a pleasure to speak to you for the first time. Hopefully it's not the last time. Thank you, sir.
I hope. Bye-bye.
And there he goes. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking to him. I've seen him any number of times, as you have, on MSNBC and other outlets. And that was not for show. I disagreed with, I'll say, the optimistic outlook and read of what the Democrats did in ending the shutdown. Look, I'm the first person who will tell you, I may get some things wrong, but I'm going to at least show you my math as far as how I came to that conclusion. Kim, where do you come out on that?
Where do I come out on what is it that
on the, I will say, the rosier picture that David Cay Johnston presented as far as what the Democrats did and why?
Well, you caught me while I was writing news, and so I'm looking at all these stories, and my picture is not rosy. I'm looking at trauma after trauma after trauma, and the possibility of untangling after you hear David Cay Johnston talking about a post-Trump America, and how he wants to make sure that Trump is alive to see what happens afterward, and that hopefully that what should have happened last time will happen this time, and people will be held accountable.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't ever see him being held accountable. Last time we tried to help, the nation tried to hold him accountable, I heard people in my own family say, it's just time to turn the page. Why go backward? Just go forward. It's what? You have someone who's trying to invade the Capitol to keep America's voice from being heard, and we're just going to lay down and accept it.
Yeah.
Where's the patriotism? No,
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic. I want to be optimistic, and my lot in life is to be an optimistic person, always looking for the silver lining. And the best silver lining I can muster is perhaps a hope that we even have a post-Trump America.
There's something in you said I think highlights the disconnect. I would make a distinction between hope and optimism. Hope, there's usually a lack of evidence to support it. I hope X, Y, or Z happens, or you're hoping against hope. Optimism to me signifies that there might be enough evidence to suggest that it could happen. As we talk about, politics is about possibilities. It's possible certain things could happen, but if we use the past as an indicator, and if the past is prologue, then no, Donald Trump is not going to be held accountable at any point in his life. He will probably, and I'm not saying I'm hopeful of this, but he will probably die in office, and we will be left holding the bag of all the things that he's done. I am not optimistic that with his death, if it should lead to that MAGA is going to disassemble in some way. They may not coalesce behind a single person like they have with Donald Trump, but I do agree with him that MAGA is here to stay and never left. And because of Donald Trump, MAGA knows that it's comfortable to be full-fledged MAGA with all the racism, sexism, Islamophobia, and homophobia that come along with it. I don't know if America is going to be able to undo anything that this president has done, either legislatively or socio-politically.
I mean, if you just take one thing, look at all the people that have been appointed to the courts. I mean, we're going to be in a world of hurt for years and years and years, especially for people like me who, I don't know, deserve rights to decide what we do with our own bodies.
Yeah.
I just look at it and I think we're never getting out of it.
And I believe when I say credit, blame, however you want to parse it, that portion goes to Mitch McConnell, and also credit the Republicans for having this 30-year plan as far as remaking the Supreme Court, the concentration on federal appointees in the way that the Democrats weren't. I still have a bone to pick with President Obama by not fighting harder for that Supreme Court pick that was stolen by Mitch McConnell, which was originally supposed to be Merrick Garland. Whether it was him ultimately as a SCOTUS justice or anyone else, I just believe this was a fundamental mistake. And then we saw what happened with Ruth Bader Ginsburg and how Mitch McConnell did a 180, and all of a sudden, we can confirm a justice right at the end of someone's term. Those are things I think the Democrats did to themselves, not having the long enough vision to see where all this was headed. I don't think anyone could have foreseen that the beneficiary, if you will, of all that would be Donald Trump, the absolute worst person at the controls, with that much control, that much power, and that much lack of self-control to not cater to his worst impulses. A sane president with this much power isn't as destructive to America as this president has been. So it's a confluence of all those things, I think, which explains why we're in the mess that we're in. And there are a number of people that we can point fingers at, but I'll save that for later in the week. Right now, I think if you are ready, we need to have an update on the news.
Let's do it. I've prepared for you.
Tony, where's our sounder? There we go.
On the Mark Thompson Show with Mo Kelly, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by Coachella'ValleyCoffee.com. President Trump is saying thank you to the U.S. veterans. Speaking at the Veterans Day observance ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery, the president said the country will never forget what they have done to make this country safe, sovereign, and free. Vice President J.D. Vance, who is a Marine Corps vet, served in Iraq, also spoke at the ceremony. President earlier laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Travel disruptions are on the rise across the United States as shutdown-related issues persist. Flights have been cut by the FAA since Friday due to shutdown-related staffing issues. Reductions increased to 6% today. They will increase to 10% by Friday. Meanwhile, the House could vote as soon as tomorrow afternoon on a spending measure that would end the government shutdown. The Senate voted last night to end the record-breaking shutdown and reopen federal agencies by passing their bipartisan bill after 8 Democrats joined Republicans to break the stalemate. The bill includes what they're calling, Mo, a mini bus of 3 full-year appropriations measures, providing full funding for SNAP benefits through next September and keeping most of the government running on a short-term basis through January 30th. President Trump says the White House's East Wing, quote, looked like hell before it was demolished. The president made the comment during a recent interview with Fox News. Trump emphasized the $300 million ballroom project will be funded by private donors, implying there will be zero money spent by the government. Oh, there's always a cost, Mo, isn't there? 300,
Always.
300 million from where? And what do we owe them? The Supreme Court is being asked by President Trump to overturn his verdict in his sex abuse and defamation civil case. Trump was ordered to pay writer E. Jean Carroll $5 million after a jury found him liable for sexual abuse in 2023. The case involved allegations of Trump sexually assaulting Carroll in a dressing room in the 90s. He later called her allegations a hoax and a con job. Now he's taking that case to the Supreme Court. A senior federal judge in Massachusetts is resigning his post in protest of President Trump. U.S. District Judge Mark L. Wolf, who was appointed by former President Reagan, wrote in The Atlantic that he is stepping down because he no longer can bear to be restrained by what judges can say publicly or do outside the courtroom. The article also reflected on Wolf's time as a judge and sounded the alarm on what he said was today's existential threat to democracy and the rule of law. While Wolf is issuing his resignation, President Trump cannot replace him with an appointee of his choosing, as former President Obama already filled Wolf's seat with Judge Indira Talwani in 2013. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene doing a little pushback on President Trump's notion that she has lost her way. President's criticism comes as Greene's public disapproval of the GOP on multiple issues, including the Affordable Care Act subsidy extensions and the Epstein files, has grown more frequent. Greene defending herself, asserting she has not lost her way. She added she is 100% America first and only. She also pushed her America First agenda with a post on X, calling for nonstop meetings at the White House on domestic policy, not foreign policy, and foreign country leaders. Trump administration is moving to open California's coast to offshore oil drilling for the first time in decades. A draft 5-year plan reviewed by the Washington Post outlines 6 proposed lease sales between 2027 and 2030 off the California coast, along with new drilling areas in the now Gulf of America and Alaska. The plan would reverse long-standing restrictions and expand oil development into regions that have been off limits since the 1980s. Now, here in California, leaders are already vowing to fight this move, citing environmental risks and the state's commitment to clean energy. Still, this proposal faces review and public comment. Disconcerting for Californians, very much so. We have not heard the end of the name Pelosi in politics. Christine Pelosi is running for state senate. The daughter of longtime Congresswoman and former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi made the announcement yesterday. The 59-year-old will be running for the San Francisco area state senate seat, currently held by Democrat Scott Wiener, who is running to replace Nancy Pelosi. Wiener's term not up till 2028, but he's running for Nancy Pelosi's congressional seat, which she will vacate in early 2027. And lastly, here we go again, Mo. Come on now. A Republican state lawmaker is proposing a new plan to split California in two.
Oh, come on.
I know. How many of these have there been, right? State
At least
Assemblyman
6.
James Gallagher of East Nicholas first introduced this resolution in August. He brought it up to the Shasta County Board of Supervisors this month, 2 days after the Democratic-backed Prop 50 passed. Gallagher's proposal calls for creating a new state comprised of the 35 inland counties, including most of Northern California and the Sierra Nevada, the Central Valley, and the Inland Empire. Shasta County would be part of the new state. Many of the counties included in the proposed new state voted no on Prop 50. If the plan is approved, it would be the first time a state gets split in two since the Civil War. Not happening.
No, not happening.
I mean, we've seen this over and over again. It's like they have the same old tired idea. What was the last time they proposed the state of Jefferson?
Yeah, I remember speaking to billionaire Tim Draper. He had a plan to split up California into 6 different parts. It's not ever going to happen. Yes, the state is unwieldy in many respects, but the state is not going to succeed. They're not going to divvy it up. They're not going to form North California and South California or West California, East California. It's just not going to happen.
There it is. Tony's got the map up. That's what it would look like. Where would you be? Would you be in the blue or the yellow?
I would be in the blue.
No,
but,
thank God, me too.
You know, it's political theater. It's not going anywhere.
No, it isn't. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is the best coffee, the best tea, hands down the best tea. Absolutely love it. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the website. There are copious notes and tasting descriptions under each coffee and tea offered on the website, so you know exactly what you're getting. It is all organic. The folks at Coachella Valley Coffee, Cliff and his team, do give back to women-owned farms. This is a great business all the way around, and the product is absolutely amazing. If you do find something that you want after kicking around at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, please use our exclusive checkout code to save yourself 10% off. Mark T, no spaces at checkout. Mark T is the secret code, and that is CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You know, I have this hankering to talk a little bit about tech.
Ah, it is Tech Tuesday.
It is Tech Tuesday, and who better to speak to about all things tech than Jefferson Graham, host of Photo Walks TV, former tech writer for USA Today, and my first conversation with him. Jefferson Graham, I know you've been patient. Thank you for waiting. Thanks for coming on today. How are you, sir?
I thought you were going to want to talk to me about my new state, you know?
Not yet.
Not yet.
You live in East California?
No, I'm in Southern, but
I got to ask you.
Go ahead.
You may not know me, but I am, I should say, I'm all about the ecology of tech. I am a Google adherent. I have a Google Pixel phone. I use Google Chrome. All of my devices are within that Google matrix. That's part of the reason why I've never been an Apple person, because Google is affordable. They focus more on the software than they do the hardware. Apple, conversely, is more about the hardware than the software. What do you find in your work as far as why people may choose one ecosystem over the other?
Well, first of all, I'm going to disagree with you about Apple. Right now, it's all about the software and the hardware. Apple, do you know what the number 2 division at Apple is? Because it's not Mac computers, it's not iPads, it's not Apple Watches, okay? It's not AirPods. It's something called services, iCloud, Apple Music, the constant nag messages for you to delete things or to buy more storage. They're bringing in like $20 billion plus a quarter. So like, you know, nearly $100 billion a year on software. So that's
outside of the iPhone, which obviously is their top product.
Yeah.
Why would they then still further try to develop these augmented reality headsets or these other hardware products?
Well, they're trying to find the next iPhone, right? Because it's been going on for 20 years, almost 18 years, and every product has a cycle that will eventually go away, so they say. They've been predicting for like 10 years that the phone is eventually going to go away and we're going to be switching to glasses. I'm a skeptic. I don't believe it. But they played a bet on that stupid $3,500 headset that went nowhere, and it was one of the biggest busts they've ever had. Meanwhile, Facebook has glasses they're selling for $300 to $500, and people are buying them as fast as they can get them. So they put their toes in the sand and they try a bunch of different things to see what clicks. But 50% of their revenues comes in from the iPhone.
Would you attribute this to a lack of vision of Tim Cook, or maybe luck on the part of Steve Jobs? Who do you think has been the
actually?
biggest
Tim Cook has done an amazing job. They sell a lot more iPhones under Tim Cook than they ever sold with Steve Jobs. So he's done something right. I think it's 2 billion people have iPhones, and that is a big base to sell more products to. You walk into their stores and they're always crowded. So they're doing something right. As far as that next hot thing, they have, the AirPods were the last one that they came up with, and they haven't done anything since. They're trying, this iPhone Air. Have you heard about the iPhone Air?
I heard about it, and I heard it wasn't selling well.
Right. It's a bust. It's another bust, but they tried the world's thinnest iPhone. Oh boy. Well, the old iPhone wasn't so thin. I mean, it wasn't so thick. It's fine. Both of them fit in your pocket. So it's a bust. They're apparently cutting back on orders and rejiggering what they expected out of this phone. Now, one of the things about this phone that was a mess is that it only has one camera lens. And if you buy the entry-level iPhone for $799, it has two. This one for $1,000 has one. Now, doesn't take a lot of logic to figure out which would you rather have, Joe Consumer, Mary Consumer. Would you like to have one lens or two? Well, you're going to want to have two. So for me, as a photographer, it's a non-starter. I can't, I don't even want to use it because you don't get the ultra wide lens, and I use that all the time.
How is Apple doing on the world stage? We know that Samsung has been eating up some market share. We know there's an ongoing debate of whether Apple is going to continue to have its products made in China. How are they perceived outside the United States?
Well, primarily in Asia and Latin America, it's mostly Android, except for Japan. And Samsung sells a lot of phones over there. India is another place. Europe, you'll see a lot more iPhones. But, the companies are neck and neck in terms of both of them are selling about 200 million phones per year. And no other consumer product is anywhere like that. Now, you mentioned Google, by the way. I do have a little Google news today.
Please.
Google Photos, which you use for your editing or storing your photos as an app on Android and iPhone, they're going to, AI is the big thing. So they're going to have a new thing where you're going to be able to speak to it and say, hey, Google, please remove those glasses. Please color in my hair. Please do this. Please do that, using your voice and using conversational requests for edits. They say it's rolling out soon to phones across the country. And what that means is that could be 6 months to a year. But
I have a Google Pixel, so I get all the updates first. And I do like the photography capabilities of Google phones. Are they still I will say the industry standard as far as photography, Android phones as opposed to Apple?
I'm getting killed by spam calls all day long, so I apologize for that.
Was that Donkey Kong?
No, that was
Mario.
Super Mario Brothers. Yes, and the reason for that is when you go into a crowded place and everybody's phone rings at the same time. Well, they all have the same ringtones. They're all the same. So I put on mine, and you definitely know it. And I'm not confused. Your question was
having to do with photography and
Yeah.
how at least in recent years, Google/Android were perceived to be superior. Is that still the case? I don't know that it is.
In some cases, in your corner, they're considered to be superior. In this corner, they are not. In this corner, the iPhone camera still is the best camera, and particularly for video, it's the best camera. For me, when because I have a Pixel, it's right over there. The colors get altered and tweaked in a sort of a wish fulfillment. My blue is bluer and my green is greener, sort of like Trix cereal, you know, orange, orange, and red, red, lemon red, or tomato red. And I can't find a button in there to bring it back down to earth. So for me, it's the iPhone. For others, some people love what they're getting on the Pixel, and some people love what they're getting on the Android. Now, the Galaxy. I just spoke to a friend who's in South Africa, and he was telling me about his Safari, and that he brought a big camera with him, but he's not even using it because his Samsung Galaxy pictures were so great. And I said, well, send them to me. I want to see them. And they are really great. I mean, they're amazing. I'm going to do a whole episode based on his Safari photos that he took on his phone, because they'll knock you out.
You mentioned this as far as where the industry may be headed, and I'm always curious about where an industry is headed. I think about photography and these phones and what it may mean for the movie industry. You see more and more things being shot on an iPhone or a less conventional method of creating content. What does this mean? You mentioned like how Meta is using glasses. Where do you see the industry going, big picture?
Well, first of all, I have a weekly series on YouTube and Scripps News. It's called Photo Walks TV. I do every episode on an iPhone. So the whole thing is shot on an iPhone. I also augment it with a GoPro and with some drone footage, but 95% is done on the phone. And the reason I do it on the phone is I don't have to lug heavy. Well, first of all, for travel photography, there's no question you want to shoot on the phone because you don't have to lug big gear. The quality you get and you're mostly shooting daytime stuff. The quality in daytime is amazing. And people don't get uncomfortable around you when you've got the big camera. They're so used to seeing these phones everywhere that they're just not, their back is not up. And that's why I do it. Recently a filmmaker made a movie of this 28 days, and I think it was more of a gimmick that he just said I could do it that way. Now, television, broadcast TV, local television, you're seeing more and more newscasts. The reporters are all doing them on the iPhone for the same reason. It's just easier, and they don't have to lug big heavy camera gear, and they're always ready, and it's always in their pocket. I was with a congressional reporter for Scripps News in Washington, D.C. recently. I met him at the Capitol, and he said he just pulls that thing out all day long, because if they have to, muss with the big camera and get the lighting set and the lens set and all that sort of stuff, it just takes time when they're approaching a senator or a congressman walking down the hall.
Jefferson Graham, I've enjoyed this conversation with you, but I'm running out of time. I did, though, want to ask your thoughts, since you mentioned broadcast television, how we consume quote unquote linear TV. There are a number of options out there. I've been with Sling TV for the past, I don't know, maybe 15 years or so, but you may have Fubo, you may have YouTube TV. There are a number of places in which you can get broadcast quote unquote television or streaming content. Where is that going these days from where you sit?
Everything you mentioned is too expensive for my pocketbook. Fubo, I think, is $50 to $60 a month. Sling used to be $25. What are you paying? $40, $45, something like that?
I have the max because I have the blue plus orange and all the different packages. But your point, I concede.
It's too. I cut the cord. I have none of them, and I have more stuff to watch than I could ever watch for the rest of my life. And I bought an antenna. The antennas of today are much better. Yeah, $25, and they have digital tuners in there, and I can watch all the local TV I want on the antenna. YouTube proper, not YouTube TV, but regular YouTube.com. Has so many clips. You can keep yourself busy for hours and hours and hours. And if there's some show you want to see, get Netflix, watch it. then cancel. Same thing, Hulu, Disney, watch it, cancel, and then wait for something else to come out.
Jefferson Graham, get out of my head, because I've been an adherent of cutting the cord for at least 15 years, and I have my digital antenna, and I've gone through all the iterations of watching. And what people don't know, and you know, of course, with digital antenna, you get HD quality for free.
Yeah,
for free, and they have these sub channels which are just there, full of content that I think people just kind of miss out on because they don't know it's there, and that's why we have these conversations.
Yeah, the shocker to me, just very quickly, is that when I got the antenna, I got a better picture quality than I had with cable.
Yes, absolutely, because I used to have DirecTV, and they wanted to charge for HD, and then when I got the digital antenna, it's like, wait a minute, it's free and it's better, a higher resolution. Absolutely. Jefferson, I can do this with you all day, all night long, but I can't. Jefferson Graham, we have to do this sometime soon in the future. Hopefully we get to talk again.
Anytime.
Thank you so much, Jefferson. Jefferson Graham. I can talk tech all day, all night. I just can't do it, unfortunately, because I got like time constraints.
What?
Kim keeps me on a very short leash.
I know. It's the way it goes. We got.
Have you cut the cord yet?
I'm a streamer. And so I've been struggling with the whole Disney Plus thing. When they asked Kimmel, I was gonna cancel, but I have kids and Disney Plus, and it's like, oh, free speech. What do you do? So yeah, I have cut the cord.
I've cut the cord, but it is now, to Jefferson Graham's point, it's become more expensive because the alternatives are expensive enough of themselves. You can't, like, I got Peacock, I have Netflix, I have Hulu, I have Disney, I have Paramount Plus, and after a while you have to make HBO. You have to HBO Max. You have to make a choice at a certain point because
You
not
can't.
all of them.
You can't possibly have them all. At least I don't. It's slim pickings over here. But recently, my husband looked at what we were doing, and they have you different packages all the time. And
Yes.
he just reduced the price on one which came with BritBox. And I've been loving BritBox.
I do love how if there's an urge I have to see an older movie, I know I can find it. I
Right.
know, like I've wanted to see the movie that came out in the early 1980s called Scanners, an old sci-fi movie. I could find it thanks to the way nonlinear TV is set up now. And I do enjoy that. I'm less impressed by newer offerings and more like just listening to old school radio or something like that. But when I have the desire to watch something old, I know I can find it thanks to these different streaming services, even the free ones like Tubi, which is great.
Yeah.
Tubi's a great one.
Yeah. It's even more of a selection than the old video store. Walking through the video store on a Friday night, you just know everything's at your fingertips. So there is some convenience there. So we have some people to thank, including Jim Slayton, who throws in a 10, says, I'm changing the old long-tailed cat in the rocking chairs analogy to this. I'm nervous as a MAGA politician at a town hall meeting.
Are they nervous?
I don't know. They seem to be getting yelled at quite a bit.
Yeah, they are getting yelled at.
We'll move to our thank you, Jim. We'll move to our favorite McAllister, Lucy McAllister, who throws down a 20. Really appreciate your contribution, Lucy. You're awesome.
Thank you,
Richard
Lucy.
Delamater popping in with a couple, says Fetterman pissed me off yesterday. WTF. Yeah, he's pissed a lot of people off.
He's consistent.
Joan Hollywood with a 5. Thank you, Joan Hollywood. Thanks for the Mo love and Mo joy.
Thank you, Joan.
And Delamater back with another couple. America, I've had it with you. You have made your bed, he says.
Yeah, but we're all having to sleep in it. That's the difference.
I don't want to sleep in this one. I don't know. It's getting uncomfortable, Mo.
Oh, it's been uncomfortable.
Someone needs to change the sheets.
Yeah. Yes. Got bed bugs and everything.
I need a fresh pillow, not a my pillow.
Throwback, call back to Mike Lindell.
There
All I
you
can
go.
say is this has been a wonderful opportunity. Kim, it's one thing to watch the show. It's another thing to participate and host and be able to talk to people like David Cay Johnston. I'm quite sure we'll have that conversation up later on YouTube as a cutout. So it's been great. We still got another 3 days to go. And Mark, he's somewhere gallivanting around the world, supposedly not working, but we keep hearing from him.
He keeps checking in. Tomorrow, John Rothman will be on the show, our presidential historian, and we will save the planet with It's the Planet Stupid and Belinda Weymouth, and of course, more Mo Kelly.
Really? You gonna invite me back?
You keep coming back. I'm going to invite you back even when Mark comes back. You guys
Sounds
can co-host.
good. Sounds
There
like
you
a
go.
date. Thank you, Tony, as well. And thank you.
When I am here, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
You know, we had our
internet.
tech issues today, but it happens.
All right.
All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Mo Kelly.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Our time. Bye-bye.